I live in Turner, Maine, which is very close to where this active shooter event went down that's captivating the country. And I literally got a email from Madagascar this morning. Someone there was actually tracking this. That's how big this has become. Tiny bit on my background. Been doing church security stuff for 12 years. My doctorate is in security, and I wrote my dissertation on the tactics, techniques, and procedures for protecting houses of worship in the 6 states of New England. And so that's how I connected with Sandy. Had a long career with the military and other things. I am involved with executive protection and training churches all over the place. So let's go to the next one. Very fast. Basics. That's really what tonight's about. Access control. Know who's in your church. Evacuation planning, right? And communication and briefing church leadership. And there's going to be a small medical piece at the very end of this. Next, please. All right. Director Ray, just a short time ago, issued this statement during the Israeli-Hamas conflict. It's underneath the little button there. I can't read it. But basically what he came to a conclusion, I've been on multiple briefings in the last week on this issue. They want to focus on lone wolves. They're thinking that the real challenge is a self-starter. And that's what we saw last night in Lewiston, a self-starter. As opposed to an organized event involving a complex attack. Not that it couldn't happen, but what the FBI is worried about is that the sheer volume of TikTok information, social media information, people under duress from economics, from social interactions, are creating the environment for self-starters, the lone wolves. And they are extremely difficult to predict and extremely difficult to stop because they don't have singular characteristics. We're not going to spend a lot of time on active shooters right up. We're going to go right into the basics of protecting the church. And here's the reason why. I believe that if you do the basics right, then even if you do have a kinetic or you have a difficult event, you're going to minimize the losses substantially. If you get the basics wrong, well, you're setting yourself up for failure. That's all that's going to happen. And what I've seen throughout New England, because I travel all over doing this exact thing, I'm seeing complacency all over. Last night, kicked the complacency bucket right out the window because all of a sudden folks woke up, right? But a month ago, as I visit churches, see all kinds of folks doing things that just look sloppy. And you can't be sloppy if you're in the security business. It just doesn't work. So next slide, please. Access control, simple. Know your entrances, right? You got to know how to get in the building, right? Once church starts, you want to reduce your your entrances down to one location, just one space, right? So that you can focus your attention, if you had to, on just that one access point. This is central. If you have a medium-sized church with, say, 6 different entrance points, and you leave all 6 wide open, there's no way in the world you're going to cover it. It's just not going to happen. You need to be able to let folks in. You want to be welcoming and all that kind of thing, right? But you don't want folks who have keys to everything just opening doors because it's convenient for them, right? Everybody knows I'm touching hot buttons, right? But that's what happens. And the next thing you know, you found out the back door was open or there's a brick there keeping it open. How'd the guy get in the building? You let him in. That's how you got him in the building. Watch for those open prop doors, and the sanctuary doors themselves need to be secureable from the inside. This is really important. When we go into active shooter responses, you need to be able to shut down the places where people are located. Just pinch them off. You might not be able to stop this person, but you can stop them from getting at 60 or 80 or 100 people. And that's if you've got the ability to lock those doors from the inside sufficiently so that it deters the person from pressing ahead. This is really important stuff. Next slide, please.
So Dan,
Yep.
question. You know, I totally agree. But how do you help the complacency? You know, how do you help ease the people into knowing that this is a good thing to do?
Boy, if last night didn't do it, the shooting in Lewiston, I don't know what will. I literally don't know. The mass murder is not necessarily inside churches, but churches compose 24% of all these mass shooting events are inside houses of worship, right? And they're not just churches, they're in mosques, they're in, right now it's synagogues. Synagogues are seeing real trouble, right? Because of the Israeli conflict. But there is a direct connection between Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, which is not a Shia organization at all, but they're linking together to cause real problems because they're attempting to facilitate a prophetic event. Mm-hmm. We have over 350,000 churches in the United States. If they can rock those churches to the point where folks refuse to go, this is really what the goal is, right? Right. Just driving you out. And so to deal with complacency, you really need somebody. It usually is just one person, someone like me that says, you know what, I'm not going to do that. You might want to lean against the wall and not pay attention, but I'm not doing that. Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't come to church to be a security guy and drink coffee and just do nothing, right? That's not the answer. At the same time, you're not a SWAT officer that's out there, you know, looking for trouble. Right. You're trying to strike that balance. Getting your pastor or getting your elder board to buy off on the reality that there needs to be controlled access to the building. Mm-hmm. Not everybody gets a key. And if they do get a key, it doesn't mean they get to keep it forever, right? They get to turn them back in when they don't need them anymore. Ensuring that the sanctuary doors can be secured from the inside. Right. Sandy and I just did a thing in Vermont just a little bit ago. We actually walked through and here now, how are you going to secure this 150-year-old Baptist church in a small country town that was never designed for any of these things? Right. Right. That's why you have to, if you're taking on this ministry, you have to take on a new set of eyes and say, okay, mm-hmm. That was then, this is now. Now is I have to be able to secure these spaces. If I have front doors that have locks that are 90 years old and don't function, right? Because we never locked the church, right? Why would we ever lock the church, right? Well, right. Now we do. Right. So does that make sense? So
you know, you need to, at least someone needs to start the conversation and and just, you know, help others to build on that. Because I know when we started locking doors, we had parents that were getting you know, upset that they just couldn't at will just, you know, walk down because right. we have to go outside in order to get down to our bottom level, but they wanted to have access to their children, and so we needed to make sure that we had that conversation with them instead of just you know, locking the doors and having no conversation. So we just need to make sure, and again, we're going to talk about this in a moment, that we communicate with people about why we're doing it, as well as yep. you know, taking a stand and making sure that we are doing it. So
trying to make this little light thing do a better job, but it's right. not. But okay. That's exactly what Sandy. Yep. This is a continual conflict, especially with folks who've been members of the church for a super long time. They pretty much own the place, right? And you come along and say you can't do that anymore. They're not going to like you. Right. They're just not going to like you. Right. Next slide, please. Yep. This is another core piece that is ignored almost everywhere I go. who's in your church? We're a welcoming place, right? We're trying to welcome the public into our facility. But where do we make contact with them? Well, basic security procedure, very basic. Works with 3 concentric rings, and when we're dealing with a church, it starts in the parking lot, it moves to the foyer or the entrance, and then it moves to the sanctuary, right? There's 3 tiers to this. If you're a loan security provider, it makes it very difficult to do this. And thus, you need help from the parking lot people, you need help from the greeters, you need help from others, right? Ushers. You want to be seeing the problem before it comes through the doors, right? If you see somebody bringing a long, what might look like a gun case towards church, right? That's not something that should be coming through the doors, period, right? A lot of churches don't allow backpacks. They just outright don't allow them. Diaper bags, no choice. You just kind of, that's a diaper bag thing. Backpacks, no, we're not doing that, right? And again, some folks are going to like it, some folks aren't. The welcoming folks through the power of hello is a Department of Homeland Security procedure, and it really is a good thing. It's just simple. When Sandy and I teach face to face, this is literally a handshake, right? And you're shaking this person's hand and you're quickly assessing who they are. You're making a connection right away. When you do it with someone that is potentially a risk, you don't do this alone. You do this power of hello thing, shaking someone's hand when you have somebody who's watching who's watching your back, more or less, in case you did find the guy. You did find the person that was a problem, right? But if you don't shake their hands, if you don't get right up and talk to them pleasantly, not nasty or anything, just be very pleasant, right? You're going to miss it, because we want to know who's in the church. We really, really do. If the guy is drunk, happens, right? If the guy's on narcotics, it happens, right? What if they're just plain stressed out, or more likely stressed out because they came to try to take their child out of childcare when they have a protection order against them and they're not supposed to have that kid? If you don't go through the power of hello process as soon as possible, right? You might miss this potential felony that's about to happen, right? The very top bullet I'm talking about, welcome everyone in while understanding what a norm is for your congregation. This is really key. Only you know what your place looks like, what is normal, right? If we were talking to a Pentecostal group, it would be different, right? If I'm talking to a Catholic group, it'd be different, right? Know what your norm looks like. So you don't want to scare folks, right, as the security guy, but you do want to reach out and talk to them. The difference between inappropriate behavior and just a little bit different, this goes to the culture of the church again, the culture of your congregation, right? You might be a more charismatic group, different. And then at the same time, what if your congregation is a bit older and they sing the old songs out of the old book and they don't want anything different, right? Well, somebody starts changing that up on you, inappropriate or just different, right? A little different, right? If somebody comes charging up the center aisle and just absolutely wants to get at the pastor, hello, is that normal for you, or is that really dangerous, right? Only you're going to know that one, and that one's going to be situationally driven. Microaggressions, I've run into this. I'm sure others have too. Gen Zs, Gen Xs, they're very sensitive to language, extremely sensitive, because they've been taught in school that even the smallest things is actually an aggressive behavior, and you have a right to not be aggressively attacked like that. Even just the simple use of a pronoun, right, the wrong way, right, can set some people off. If you're a security guy, just be very careful. I'm older, right? I'm 67. my biases come from being on the planet a long time, right? Well, what if I'm trying to interact with a 24-year-old. I'm a boomer versus a Gen Xer, right? It's just different. If you're going to be in the security business, you have to really learn how to be a chameleon. Transform yourself, right? Because what are we trying to do? We're not trying to scare anybody, but we do want to find out, right, if this person's a challenge. And it's so important that if you can somehow do it, make your parking lot your first contact. That is really a big deal. That parking lot guy needs to have a radio. If they see something they don't like and they can't tell anybody, well, what are they going to do? Jump up and down and all that? I mean, none of that's going to work. They got to be able to talk to somebody who can secure the foyer and say, all right, if they get past the foyer, can we secure the sanctuary? Right? With 3 tiers. Next, please.
And
Yep.
so, to kind of wrap that up. So it's about building relationships. And so your security team members need to be okay with interacting with people.
Oh, good point.
And I love the fact that Walter sent a little a text in here, and he said that when you're shaking hands, if they don't make eye contact, that might be a good red flag. And so, we have to be aware that as we're making relationships with people, we're going to get to know them, because I think that as we learn people's names, it kind of disarms them, and it can, bring the level down if they're, having a bad day. I think that if you approach them, as you say, the power of hello, we're a little bit upbeat and all that type of stuff, that really can help disarm sometimes, a situation. And then the other thing I think that you said that I think is important is that you're 67, right?
Yep.
And you need to be thinking to make sure that your security team has people that are younger on it, because we're not going to be here forever. And so, right. And they can really help with, some of the situations that we're not as familiar with. I think they'd be a good voice on a security team. So, and I've said this before too, in trainings we've done, is women. You need to make sure that you have women on your safety and security teams, because you need women. If you're going to talk about medical emergencies, if you have a medical emergency, you're going to want women there. If you have a woman who's had a heart attack or whatever, you need to have women and younger people. Somebody asked, should the security team be discreet or obvious? That's a good question.
That's a debatable thing. That's a debatable thing, because if you talk to law enforcement, a component of law enforcement is that uniform that snaps somebody around to, like, okay, this person has authority right away.
Right.
At the same time, at the national level, folks have discussed this back to church security, national level. The consensus is no uniforms. For the simple reason that you don't want to overtly identify yourself as the very first target to get shot. You can be doing a really good job wearing soft clothes, just regular clothes, right? I'm a giant fan of using colored lanyards to separate who's who in the organization, right? Teachers have one color, security has another color, the prayer counselor is another color. Good enough, right? Nothing too complicated, right?
Right.
But how overt do you want to be? The best security system I ever saw was out in Tacoma, Washington, where literally the parking lot guys were talking to literally everyone that came forward. There were 6 layers of these guys, and they're shaking hands, and they're so happy that you're there. And they had radios, and they were passing it on, right? And one of the questions came up, what if you don't have a foyer? Well, as they approach the front doors, right, the folks that were working this very large church already knew who was who, right, before they even got there, right? And they had someone whose sole job was to stay above it all and be ready to respond to someone that came through the doors that shouldn't have been in the building, right? That was their job. Right. And if you don't have a foyer, if you don't have like a greeting hall or whatever it might be, right? Say you're renting a YMCA and you're using a space for that, right?
Yep.
You're going to have some place where you would normally the greeters would hand out bulletins and that kind of thing, right? That's going to be your foyer. That's going to complicate a tactical response significantly because you have no way to secure anything past it. But traditional churches throughout New England have front door, side entrance, right? There's a separation between that place and the sanctuary. And that's the space that foyer I'm talking about is, right?
Right.
Now, some folks, like my church, East Auburn Baptist Church, we try to put somebody outside, inside, and then in the sanctuary all the time, right? Now, how astute or how paying attention that person is completely situational because we have different personalities, different reasons why they volunteer, right? Right. And that's just how volunteerism works. Right. I hope I answered your question. So if you don't have a foyer, you're going to have to make something like that, right? Especially if you're using an improvised building.
Well, and as you say, you start in the parking lot.
Yeah.
You know, on the porch. We have a very small foyer. So we start chatting people up and, relationship building, as you say, outside on the porch as people come in. One of the things I would say, though, is make sure your congregation knows who your security team is. Because if we communicate with our church and we've told our church who the 6 people on the team are, just in case they have a need or something. And we always say to people that whoever's out in the foyer, that will be a member of the security team. And that if the person who's out in the foyer, if something does happen, that's the person that's going to call the shots, so that people know that if a situation happens, there is somebody in charge. And so we just want the congregation to know that there is going to be a person. It's the person out in the foyer, and they don't have uniforms or anything like that, but whoever's out in the foyer, that's a member of the security team. And if something goes down, that person would be the first line of defense if it's a fire or something like that. And then the other people inside the sanctuary also understand that if that person can't do it, then who's going to be next? So you just have to make sure you don't have to communicate it to the whole world when new people come in, but your right. Congregation should know, who the people are. So another question, security or safety team?
Right now, the trend is safety team, because depending upon the state that you're in, there's legal language describing what is a security team, whether you have to have posted a bond, created a company, all that stuff, right? And so when you say safety team, most folks equate that to OSHA and little plastic hats and that kind of thing, right? But for churches, that safety team name seems to be working pretty well.
Yeah, I like that trend a lot, because safety is everything. It can be a fire. It also can be keeping people safe, in a violent situation. So I like the trend that they are going to safety team better.
Yep.
All right, next slide.
All right, can't be any bigger. The very first thing Sandy and I do when we go to these little events that we put on, we talk about evacuation planning. It's right up front. This is the job that has to be thought about first before you start thinking about guns and all kinds of fancy equipment and everything else. You got to know how to get your people out of the building safely. you're far more likely to have a fire or some other kind of problem like that than you are a fellow trying to shoot the place up. It's just the truth, right? What I have found is most congregations will talk about this, but they'll never practice it. And they're afraid that they'll lose tithing members. I'm going to say this is really harsh. They're afraid they'll lose tithing members because they were pushed to do something they don't want to do, which is something like this, right? Like once a year, say, okay, instead of finishing the sermon, when like the pastor always does, we're going to practice how do we get everybody out of here, right? If you're a small congregation like Sandy's, 60, 70 people, it's not that big of a deal. If you're mine 1,300, right? I mean, this is a problem, right? This is a big job to practice 4 services in a 660 person auditorium, right? With another 200 plus kids and workers all over this is a job. You really have to think this one out, right? How am I going to get people out of this building? In New England, we're talking about snow, right? Maybe not in Connecticut as much, but up here we are, right? And who knows what this winter is going to bring. You got to know those meeting places that you're evacuating people to are appropriate. If you picked those places when the weather was lovely and it's 75 degrees in the summer, well, that might not work on December 29th. And it was like a cold, freezing rain and it's dark, the spot that you picked. Because again, if you're in New England, once we go to what's it called? Daylight savings, it's really dark, right? And so you got to be prepared to do this job in the dark, in the rain, in whatever, right? Because true to form, these kind of things do not happen on pleasant days. They happen on the worst times, right? Are your entrance doors capably and secured from the inside again, right? This is that lockout procedure that is the precursor to active shooter problems, right? We're going to keep people, we want it, one part of the plan is get them out. Another part is to keep them out, someone who should not be entering the building, right? Can the sanctuary doors secured from the inside? I can't say it enough, right? This needs to be done. So when I'm talking about the entrance doors, I'm talking about those glass or wooden, whatever ones they are that go to the street. Can you lock those things quickly? So if your parking lot guy comes up and says, hey, we got a problem here, got it. I'm locking the front door. I'm not waiting for that problem to walk through the door, right? We're going to shut it down right now. Well, to do that, your team has to have keys. We have doors on ours that require a hex key to lock them sometimes, the different kinds of things, right? If you don't have these tools, you're not going to be able to execute the mission, right? You got to have it. Ensure that your teachers know how to respond at the same time, right? So when you go to one of our trainings, you'll see a go bag. It's a little red LL Bean book bag that has a bunch of stuff in it that in the event of one of these lockdown evacuation type things, the teachers in that classroom can close the door, seal the door, and protect those children. Say they have 8 kids in their care, right? There's 2 teachers, 8 kids, so now there's 10 people in there, right? What if it takes law enforcement 4 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours to clear the building so they can get, before they can get those kids out? Well, in the meantime, they have needs, right? And if you don't anticipate these things, you're going to have really messy problems, right? And so, again, this is stuff you see in our training programs. And lastly, this is something it's completely ignored by almost everybody except the Department of Homeland Security. They do not ignore this one. You have to have a reunification plan for connecting your students to their parents. The Sunday school teachers are going to escort those kids someplace. You're going to think about it ahead of time, right? But you do not want the parents coming and getting the kids in the point of an evacuation, right? You want the school teachers, you want the Sunday school teachers taking those kids to the designated meeting places where they're supposed to be, not waiting for the parents. If you're hanging around waiting for the parents and there's a fire, this is, you're setting yourself up for failure. They need to move, right? The kids get it because they do these, what, 7, 8 times a year at school. So it's not a big deal, right? But at Sunday school, they never do it, right? Or almost never, I should say. And so this is a complacency thing. It really has to be thought out. I now have 8 kids. I'm standing in the rain, in the dark, doing whatever, right? I've got my go bag, which has some ponchos in it or whatever the heck it might be, right? How am I going to connect my 8 kids to those 8 parents, to those 16 parents, or whatever it is? There's got to be a way. Got to have a roster. There's lots to this, but just bringing out, this is just some of the stuff that has to be talked about. On the left of your slide, there's a picture. It says emergency evacuation route, right? This is really important. That little green sign, you need to have signs telling people where to go. If you don't have signs, they're going to go anywhere. They're going to go all over the place, right? Fire trucks, ambulances are going to try to get into the site, and you've got people standing in the way. You got people in the parking lot. You've got them all over, right? It's just chaos. You need to have some signs thought out. Okay, this is where their meeting plans are, right? This is where we're going to do it. The reunification piece, too easy. You know, the pastors need to know how to do it, right? It's not hard. But if you don't have a plan, it's a guaranteed mess. So, and what do you think, Sandy? This is Sandy's lane. This is what she does the best.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I appreciate what you said about, you know, making sure your teachers know what to do. And this can be done at a Sunday school meeting. It doesn't have to do the whole church. I mean, if your church is reticent and doesn't want the whole church to do a fire drill, at least have your teachers do a fire drill. For them to know exactly where to go. So in your parking lots, you should have these signs. We have 2 signs in our parking lot, one on each side of the building, because the kids are going to go to this side, the parents are going to go to the other side. Just that's how our building is laid out. We don't have any other choice. So they're going to be on 2 opposite ends. And so it's important. It's so important that a couple of weeks ago, I made an announcement at church. Twice a year, we always tell our people, these are the safety and security things you need to be aware of in our church, because we have new people all the time. So twice a year in our bulletin, we have a half sheet that has all that information. So this time I said, now your assignment is to go, when you leave today, to find those 2 signs out in our parking lot. And the first person that comes back to me and tells me where the 2 signs are is going to get a $10 Dunkin' Donuts gift card. And you know what? I'm still waiting for somebody to come and tell me that they found the signs. So again, it goes back to what you said at the very beginning, Dean. It's called complacency. And so we have to keep telling people, because they are not listening. And the more we tell them, the better, because we tell our parents, do not go downstairs. If there's an emergency, we've got you covered. We know what we're doing. And I think that that's one of the things that we're going to talk about in a minute. We need to make sure that we're communicating with people, all of these things. But we do more. You know, we do have a training coming up. So we go in depth in all of these things. But yeah, you're right. Evacuation is, as you say, Dan, is not pronto, number 1.
All right. Yes, please. Communications. Okay. You can see on there, this is true, absolutely true. The first thing that fails is communications every time, right? Yep. We need to, it's a core skill. Why does it fail? Usually it's not because of technology. It's because of procedure and practice. You're not practiced in it, right? PACE, primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. Kind of chopped it off on there. The contingency. This is a very important piece. So you have a primary way of communicating. It might be radios, it might be whatever it is, right? To cell phones, something, right? But what happens when the battery dies on the primary radio? or you forgot to turn it on. And so you've got your radio and you're happily walking around the parking lot and you don't hear anything from anybody. Well, nobody likes me today. No, you might not have turned it on, right? That's why you have communications checks. It's just appropriate. When I'm some of my guys don't like this. When I'm on the lead on this stuff, I'm doing comm checks every 15 minutes. I want to know that your battery didn't die, right? And it takes just seconds. Just touch. Hey, this is me. Good. Yeah, I'm good. That's it. The radio works, right? If I wait too long, wait a half an hour, an awful lot of stuff can happen in a half an hour, right? And so this guy, whose radio is not turned on or the battery's dead or whatever it might be, right, is just wandering around, not even helpful because he doesn't know, right, or she doesn't know. Now, the alternate method, again, has to be thought about. Like, how can I, if that radio doesn't work, how am I going to get a hold of it? There's lots of different ways depending on the size of your group, right? You send a runner, just send it, or you can just walk over there and talk to them, right? Hey, your radio, did you hear that? No? Oh, okay. There has to be a planned method. Contingency is when all those things don't work, right? What else can I do? Is there any other way I can communicate with critical people that absolutely have to be communicated with? Emergency is just that. Now, most of the time at the emergency level, it's a pen and paper. When somebody comes on your crew, one of their equipment checks, it's more important than just about than a lot of things. Do they have a piece of paper and do they have a pen, right? Or a pencil? Can they communicate? So if they can't communicate and you're not hearing anything, write it down, hand it to somebody, go over there, right? It's very basic, but you'll come up with whatever works for you. Who's going to actually do the communications during an emergency? So you actually have a problem. You now have someone who's having a heart attack. The AED has been deployed. All kinds of things are going on, right? Who's calling 911? Oh, we have to talk about that, right? Because if you call 911 and you don't know the address to your church, you've got a problem. 911 goes through a system that's called Public Safety Answering Points, PSAPs. Each state is different on how they handle them. Some are consolidated, some are distributed all around the state. If you have a consolidated one and you're living in Eastern Connecticut and you call this thing, oh, it's First Baptist Church of Kents Hill. Okay, I'm in Hartford. I have no idea where that is, right? You got to be able to give them the exact address so that dispatcher can send it. If they're using a cell phone to contact them, they're not going to automatically have the location that they're calling from. They only get that location if it's a hardline radio, right? They don't automatically start triangulating and all this fancy stuff. That's just not how the system works, right? So it's really important that you guys actually know the address, the physical address, and practiced making an emergency call. Now, when I train this in real terms, I literally call ahead of time to the PSAP folks and say, hey, we're going to practice this a little bit. And okay, we got it, right? And they're okay with that because they want you to do it right. They don't want you to do it wrong, right? So it's totally okay. Practicing drills, focusing on working together, staying calm, super important, super important. The Department of Homeland Security is also greatly encouraging churches to embrace something that they call plain language communications. Some churches use 10 codes, which the cops have, they have like a 10-9, 10-4 good buddy, all this stuff, right? That's fine. You can do those things, but Homeland Security is thinking, we don't really want you doing that. We would much rather you just tell me what's going on, right? Instead of this abbreviation code that the cops use because of people on scanners listening in. You don't have that problem. If some scanner is listening to your church's GMRS radios for whatever reason, I mean, they need to get a better life, because it's like unnecessary, right? But you need to be able to speak directly to the situation, whatever it is. Just tell them quietly, direct, right? Most importantly was the last little thing there, staying calm. When folks get excited with radio comms, they become almost unlistenable. They start talking really fast, right? And start blah, 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 all this information starts blasting out, right? Well, the person on the PSAP side has to sort that out and decide, are they sending a fire truck? Are they sending an ambulance, or are they sending an aircraft carrier? What are they doing, right? I mean, and if you talk so fast that they can't figure it out, right? That's a bad thing. So emergency communications, I know we're talking about simplistic stuff, but if you get these things correct and you do have a problem, you're going to have the right kind of helpers coming to help you in a timely fashion, right? If you don't get it right, they're going to be slow to arrive. They might even go to the wrong location because you said it's First Baptist Church of wherever, and they thought it was First Baptist Church of Danbury or wherever, right? And they sent the wrong team, right? So it's important. Next slide, please.
Right. And the other thing too, Dan, a couple of
Yep.
some made a couple of comments, but first of all, and I appreciate the fact that we need to make sure we program key phone numbers into our cell phones, because if one of your primary thing goes out, if you're using radios, a cell phone might be your alternate. I don't know.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is if you have many people who serve, say, in your preschool or your children's department, and you don't know who they are, and that's the way you're communicating, there may be Sundays where you don't even know who the person is down there.
Right.
And you have to think about, how am I going to communicate with the people in the preschool room? Now, we're supposed to get a radio in our preschool room, and our security team forgets all the time to bring down the radio to our room to make sure that we're communicating with them if need be. We haven't had to communicate with them for any emergency, but if we do have an emergency, how are we going to communicate with them? So you need to have these things figured out now, because when it does happen. And the other thing too, Dan, you mentioned about, your radio's working. Also, your AED machine, if your church is blessed enough like ours to have an AED machine, make sure that the battery's not gone, because it doesn't last forever, right?
Right. Right.
So every year you need to, somebody, and what I would say is get a person on your team and give them the assignment that they check the batteries, that they're the one to go around, because what ends up happening is everybody says it's everybody's job, and then it's nobody's job.
Yep.
So think about, finding that person on your team, or even if they're not part of that, maybe they're the ushers, and maybe that's all that they do. They're not on your team, but they would love to check all the batteries and be that person that's dependable. So it doesn't always have to be that person that's on your team. So, and also somebody mentioned that they sought out the local numbers for fire and police. So instead of going the 911 route, they actually found the local numbers, and they use those. So it sounds like they've practiced using those, like you said, practice. So I think
That's a tricky one. That's a really tricky one. I've dealt with this. Here's the difference. When you call direct, right? Say you have the firehouse direct, right? And you circumvent the PSAP system, which is what can happen. They don't always have the same recording equipment on those telephones. And so there's a chain of custody that starts with that phone call. I don't know if you've noticed that. Like, you see that on TV, they'll talk about, well, what was this phone call saying? Well, they've got that because it's recorded, right? When you circumvent the system and go direct to, my town had this forever. We had the person who dispatched the ambulance was sitting in her living room with a red phone next to her seat, and she just pick it up. Hey, I know you. Oh, what's the problem? And then they send the ambulance. There was no recording. There was no anything, right? This is just how they always did it. It's a country kind of thing, right? Where nowadays, It's not so much, but there is no doubt it will be faster if you go straight to the ambulance company or whoever it is, right? It can be faster. At the same time, they're not going to have the capability to dispatch the support assets that go with it. And so if there was a need for what's called a mutual aid call, so for example, the phone call goes in, it's from a church, and the church has 100 people at it on a Sunday morning, right? And they call direct to the fire department. It's a pretty good chance that's going to be a mutual aid call no matter what. They're going to call out more than one truck, more than one unit because of the sheer number of people involved, right? The local fire guy might not do it, but the PSAP guy definitely will, right? So you have to balance that out. You decide what's best.
Yeah,
um,
and work
so-
with your local agencies, because
Yeah.
that's the best thing you can do, is be friends with them. And if they feel like the direct numbers are the best, go for the direct
Yeah,
numbers.
do for it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
All right, stakeholders. That's a fancy phrase that gets used by government types, right? Stakeholders are people that have a reason to be engaged, right? In a church, you have lots of stakeholders, lots of them. You have Sunday school people, you have platform people, you have ushers, you have parking lot folks. You have folks in the nursery who are not the same as Sunday school teachers. They're two totally different ministries, right? They're really quite different. And then to confuse it all, we add safety/security, right? Is there anybody in charge of any of this? Probably not. I do know at a national level, the larger organizations are establishing a safety coordinator that actually crosses all those lines and coordinates between the parking lot folks, the safety security people, the Sunday school folks, so that critical information does not get missed. In coordinations for, say, larger events, say you have an Easter pageant and it's going to involve lots of things, right? Then you actually have someone that you can work with, right? So if your organization is a little bit bigger, you might want to have, if you've got someone with the social skills to pull it off, a single point that can communicate with all these folks, right? Make it nice. If it's an assistant pastor or something like that, that's great. If you actually have someone like that. But if you don't, you might need someone who helps to coordinate this. Because if safety is going to run a evacuation drill and they don't coordinate it with all these other stakeholders, oh my word, you might as well just lock the doors, because they'll be hating each other for months, right? Because you made a mess, right? It really does need to be coordinated. In the middle of this slide, you'll see a thing, write down critical actions. You really do. If something is critical, you need to write it down, right? Our memories, my ancient brain memories, it's getting stiffer all the time from time, right? Doesn't remember everything, but pale ink on a piece of paper has perfect memory. It's perfect. Whatever I wrote down, well, I can't remember. Well, I wrote that down. Okay, there it is. And so I'm back to people on the job have a little fold thing like this with a pen and they write stuff down, right? Because your memory is just not what it used to be. Next slide, please. I'm trying to be sensitive to your time, guys, because I can see I'm getting long. This is really important. I've run into this just recently as I've been traveling around. Stress management. I'll just read this thing. Stressful life events. This is a direct quote from the International Journal of Clinical Practice from 2012. Stressful life events such as natural calamities, financial crises, terroristic attacks, and wars are known to be life-threatening triggers for cardiac events, as are positive, emotionally charged events, sports, Christmas, and New Year's, right? Thus worsening the prognosis in vulnerable individuals. This is a big deal. Every one of those bullets on there is actually occurring right now. We have a war in Israel. That's that could turn into World War III if we're not careful, right? My community just had an active shooter in it, right? Just a short time ago. We have people with more debt in their personal lives than they've ever had before, ever. They owe a ton of money. If you're trying to buy a house and the cheapest house you can find is $500,000, that's stress, right? A lot of it. Why are we talking about cardiac? These folks come to our churches. They come to our congregations. I just helped a guy like on this exact thing just a short time ago, like 5 days ago, right? Go to the next slide, please, and it'll kind of help me fill it in. What are we looking at? Stress readiness. You got to be ready for this, right? You don't want to be, again, you're the safety guy. You're trying to think bigger, right? Know the signs of a stressed out person. What do they look like? Well, there's no singular stress to singular thing. They sweat, right? If they're actually under real cardiac stress, right? This is their blood pressure problems, right? They're generally overweight. Generally speaking, age is an issue if we're talking about cardiac stuff, right? So can a 25-year-old have a heart attack? Yes, if you're in the NBA and you're like get these unusual things happen, right? But who goes to the hospital more than anybody else? It's a 45 to 60-year-old male, right? With a stressful job, who's 50, 60 pounds overweight. And the last time they went to the gym was when they were in the Army at 20 years old, right? These are all like normal things, right? And if you have the courage to do this and look at your church population and like, holy smokes, this is like a third of the people in the building. Got it. We're in a stressful time leading to potential big problems, right? So when you go to Sandy, when we do our trainings, we go into AED training. Everybody knows how to run an AED. We do chest compression only CPR training. Now, why chest compression only? It's not quite the same as going through the full American heart thing. If you can push a chest, boom, 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 100 to 120 beats, it pushes a minute, two inches deep, right? All that kind of stuff. Keep them going long enough for the ambulance to get there and do what they got to do, then you've done the right thing, right? Post-COVID, how many people really want to start blowing down somebody's throat to give them rescue breaths? Not many. And clinically, it's been found that if you just simply push a chest, you're like 95% there. And let that chest come back up. As it expands, it's going to draw enough ambient air in to get the job done, right? Response planning is critical. So if you had somebody suddenly grab their chest and keel over, right? How are you going to deal with it? I mean, you really got to have a plan, right? If you have an AED, who's going to go get it? If you don't have an AED, you're doing CPR and you're making a phone call, right? Either way, what I've just, as I was researching this exact subject, a very critical piece came out, which was don't wait. This was coming clearly from other physicians. Do not wait. If you're seeing this stressed out person, they got like high blood pressure. What's high blood pressure? Like above 130 systolic. Generally speaking, that's not good for somebody, right? I just treated a guy just a short time ago on another mission I was on. We couldn't get his heart rate below 156. Now, if you can't, there's things happening to people. If we can't fix it, right? They need a hospital. You know, they need care, right? If they're in your church, it's 911. Don't hesitate. Let the fire department show up with a paramedic or whoever they have, right? And get the thing going. They're not going to charge you for this, right? There's no cost for them to show up. The cost occurs when they start transporting people and pushing drugs. But the only reason why they're going to push drugs and transport people is you're sick, right? You need to be in the hospital. So anyway, as we move into this very challenging time, right? Lots of stress, lots going on in the world. Just be aware. Don't ignore these obvious things. Yes, the folks that are dad to 4 different teenagers and all that kind of stuff, these are the people whose hearts have trouble, and you got to be ready for it. So anyway, next, these are some of the hard references I've got for this if anyone wants to actually go after it. There's a lot. I'm an academic also. I teach for the University of Maine, teach Homeland Security. There's lots and lots of hard data on everything I've talked about. Now, the very last bullet on this list, Hamas attack on Israel has global ramifications. I figured I'd bring this into this conversation because this is central to things, right? Director Ray, like I said, they're talking about lone wolves now. You know, folks that are self-starters that are taking on these bigger causes. You as a church security provider, safety team, or medical, whichever you're doing, right? You just have to be aware of it, but you can't, but we're not, the United States is not at war with Hamas. We're not there yet, right? And we might not ever get there. Sometimes what folks do is watch CNN and Fox News so much that they get all wrapped around these things and then lose sight of what we're actually doing, right? We're here to care for people, kindness, you know, all that kind of thing, right? These bigger problems, I've been in 5 different conflicts as a soldier. They'll come and find you. Big events, big wars, big things, they just come find you, right? But as a regular person, taking care of needs of folks that you can see and touch, and that's what you need to be focused on, in my opinion, right? The active shooter, we get to that really quick. So what happened up here in Lewiston? We don't really know that much. They haven't caught him yet, right? There are, for me as an academic who studies these things, there was a couple of things that jumped out at me as I started to see empirical data that was being released. This is a trend. This is a change, I should say. What we're seeing now is people carrying what we call long guns, rifles, into places that traditionally would not be bringing a rifle in there. How do you hard a rifle? It's not easy, right? One of the changes that happened with this last guy in Lewiston, he actually killed more people than he wounded. It's usually the other way around. Wound 7 folks, or excuse me, kill 7 folks, wound 3 times as many, 20, right? He did the other way around. Some of the casualties that I saw reports on were hit multiple times, multiple gunshots into the same person, which tells me this person had skill sets, right? He might be a psychotic person, but this is getting very dangerous, right? So relative to churches, because one of the hot button things that St. United sees that we do training, it always ends up talking about guns in some capacity, right? We're starting to see this trend towards lots of ammunition, lots of hyperviolence, put it that way. Your security safety team members cannot just go under the assumption that, well, I think I shot my pistol, you know, a couple of years ago. No. There's a huge difference between taking this thing out of your pocket once in a while and actually going and practicing, right? This is a different thing. And when we're seeing this very high level of violence, it does require training. It does require practice, right? If you don't think you're comfortable doing that, that's okay too. You're better off doing the 5 major things I talked about, being able to secure the space, communicate well, know how you're going to do it, have the right medical tools available to you because you're going to need them, right? being able to secure the space, very vital, versus attempting to use a firearm when you haven't used a firearm in an environment like this in a long time, right? Against somebody that's carrying a rifle that might have as many as 1,000 rounds with them, right? It might not be a winning formula for you. The other stuff might be more important. The other thing I could see out of this, the little bit that I could get out of this person, this issue of psychosis is real. It's very real. The shooter that we're hunting for had a psychotic break, right? Hearing voices, all that kind of stuff, right? These are things that are actually been chronicled. None of us, myself included, can see into another person's mind. We just can't do it, right? I don't know what's going on in there, right? But I can use the power of hello. I can read faces pretty good, right? If I see somebody kind of looking like they have something in their pants that shouldn't be there, well, it's probably not supposed to be there, and it's most likely not a broken leg, right? You got to be smart about this, right? These folks, they don't seem to have these shooters, I should say. They seem to be male. Matter of fact, 95% male. That seems to be the number. And they seem to be between the ages of 25 and 40 years old, very consistently. So once again, we're not profiling everybody that looks like this. That's microaggressions and all that kind of thing. But just got to be smart about it, right? If you're going to take on the role of a safety guy, and I can't reinforce this enough. Sandy and I are going to be out doing, what do we call it? Security 202 or something like that, right? We start working on drills and start doing tabletop exercises all around New England. It's time to get busy on this stuff, folks. You don't want to be the one that just assumed that everything's going to work out when it was your responsibility to make it work out. And you just didn't do anything because it was uncomfortable. So anyway, that's my
but an important thing, I just want to rewind, Dan, because I don't want anybody on the call to think that we're advocating firearms in the church.
Right.
I know that a lot of churches use firearms. I mean, they have your security teams have them. That's a discussion you need to have with your church leadership, because I don't want anybody saying the BC&E told us we should, we should be carrying guns. That's not what Sandy Coelho was saying at all. Dan does talk about it when we do training, because a lot of people have questions about that. We err on the side of, that's what your church has to decide and talk about. And as Dan says, do it responsibly and make sure if your people have not been trained to utilize the weapon in situations like we're talking, then there are trainings that happen around our area that people may need to try to get involved with. But we're not saying that you should go out and get some firearms and be ready for that. Because to be honest, what's going to more you need to focus on is the safety aspects. Like, what are you going to do in case of a fire? What are you going to do in case of a parent that wants to come in and take their child out from, from a Sunday school or a small group, and they don't have permission? Those are the types of things we're going to see. We're going to see people get agitated or unhappy with something going on. So those are the types of situations. And we do talk about active shooter because it happens. It's reality. But but there's a balance there when it comes to that, when we talk about that. So I think that's an important thing to note here when it comes to wrapping it up. So make sure you're talking to your church leadership. Somebody asked about children's areas, glass doors locked but visible to see the children from the open lobby. Should the glass doors be darkened?
Okay, Okay, here's the very latest from DHS on this. If you go to the training, you're actually going to see us do it. You have to walk up to that door, you as a planner, look through the glass door and look for the corners of the room that you cannot see into. You're going to mark on the floor that space from the inside of the room, right? That is where the children get hidden. You don't hide, one time they talked about scattering them all over the place, right? Now it's changed and said, no, if this bad guy looks through the glass window, whether it's been covered up or not, looks through the window and doesn't see anything, we learned this from the Virginia Tech shooting, they move on. Mm-hmm. So if they look through your Sunday school glass window and they can't see anybody in there and the kids are all quiet, that's good. But that's because you put them in the corner that can't be viewed through that window because of just plain old-fashioned geometry. This just can't be done. The door is locked. They're not opening the door. They can only see so much. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, and the other thing is too is make sure you have a shade.
Absolutely.
There should be a shade on the door, so you could be very quickly. Your folks can just pull that down if they, if they hear pop, 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 pop. Even if it ends up not being an active shooter, whatever, just make sure that they have that. Right. So you can get some shades for that. And now they have doors that, especially if you're new building or you're redoing a space, you can actually get doors where the shade is inside the door. It's glass, but it's inside the door, and then it'll come right down. So there are some new technology out there, isn't there, Dan? Have you seen that?
Yes, there's a mountain of it. It gets down to dollars and cents.
Correct.
It really does.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of new rapid secure systems for classroom doors. Correct. Meaning that it's a steel bolt that drops straight down into like a receiver in the floor that has been tested so someone can bash on it for, I think it's upwards of 10 minutes without being able to penetrate the door if it's a solid door. Yeah. Versus a door lock, like midway through the door, and those usually last maybe 3 to 4 bashes and the door is open, right? Right. It has to do again with the physics of how a door is made, but there's a ton of stuff. But for real world New England little churches, right? You're not going to do this. You're not a Texas 10,000 person mega church with $500,000 a day coming in for revenue, right? It's just not true. Right. So you'll improvise things. You'll figure it out. You just get in and look at it. You think, I never thought I had to lock this door before, but maybe I do, right? Maybe I just need to go to the farm, go to the Ace Hardware, buy a different door lock and put it on the door, right? And now it actually, instead of not having a lock on it, it has a lock on it, right? Or I can show you other ones that use little pieces of cord and all kinds of things. Very simple systems. I don't want to go too long. I'm looking briefly at some of your.
We got to wrap up.
Yeah, we got to. I can see all these questions and stuff. I'm more than happy to answer any question you might have. There's my phone number. Sandy's got yours up there too, right?
Right. So let me say about, we do want to wrap up because it's already 15 minutes over. So we are doing a safety and security essentials coming in November on the 18th. At a church in Worcester, and so that's an 8:30 to 3 p.m. event. So if you want to sign up, there's a QR code on the screen. If you want to take a picture of that, I have to update the flyer. That'll get updated probably tomorrow. So if you want to go to that website, it'll give you some more information if you want to register, and we can make arrangements to come to your church. Just contact me. We'd have to have a certain amount of people there in order to travel We've already done, I think, 6 this year. And then next year, this year we've been doing what we've called safety and security essentials. Next year, we'll probably still do a couple of these, but we're going to probably focus on it's called Church Safety and Security 2.0, which will be more about situations that will actually do case studies and things like that, as well as build on some of the things that we do in the essentials. So be sure to reach out. We're glad to help. And Virgil, I'll have Dan let you know where perhaps you can find that active shooter training if you're interested in that. I'll send that to Dan so he can try to do that offline, because I don't know right away. So anyway, we have a great special, this is great info. Okay, very good. Well, I hope that it was helpful. Thank you for hanging around for an extra 15 minutes. And if you if you have further questions, you certainly can get a hold of it. I'm going to go back one more slide here if you want to get a hold of us about doing an active shooter drill. I think that any type of drills you can do, the better with your safety and security team. I think that the more time you can spend together as a team outside of doing the stuff in church, the better, because as Stan has already said, communication, it cannot hurt. And walking your building is looking at places that are not secure is very helpful. When we go to different churches, Dan does exactly that. I love how he goes around to the whole building, outside, inside. Let's look at the different issues that might be happening there. And again, the more time you do that as a team, the better. So hopefully that is helpful.